All right, it's time. You want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, cool.
All right, so like Sam said, I'm going to be moderating for the first part. I have a demo coming up while Sam is talking. I'll be trying to look at the questions and stuff. If it seems like as we can answer it within the time, we'll try to do that live. If it looks like things are going to start going long, we may end up holding questions to the end. But ask away, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, to that point, as I mentioned earlier, for those who just came in, we're going to gloss over some major details. So, yeah, we can't fit all of it in an hour. So there are emails. If you have questions, you can certainly email me. I'm sure Casey probably feels the same way. Next slide. So we'll very briefly do the Our Giants Are Female. This is Naomi Cedar. If you're in the Python community, you may have heard of her. She wrote a book called The Quick Python Book, which is actually quite thick, probably 300 or 400 pages. It's supposed to be pretty good. And she is on the Python Foundation and very involved in that and out promoting inclusion and diversity and all that stuff. And she's been on a lot of podcasts lately. She's got some really good things to say. I highly suggest you go look her up on some of the social media stuff. She's on all the major social media stuff. Bios. I am the owner of SAS Workshops, president of GLA and A, host of the LabVIEW Experiment, which is a new podcast. GLA Organizing Committee, DQH Trusted Advisor, CLA, CPI, LabVIEW Champion, blah, blah, blah. You could read yours if you want, Casey.
Yeah, I'm Casey, co-founder of Zyah Solutions. I feel so inadequate next to the list of bullet points next to your Sam.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm on the GID Exchange Committee. I'm a member of the Actor Framework Guild, and I'm a CLA and CLED.
Aren't you like the guy who started all that?
The rumor has it, yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully soon LabVIEW Champion. I know. Somebody told me you filled out an application. You definitely got my vote.
Bird.
So,
cool.
All right. Next. All right. So, full disclaimer. These are our opinions. There's a lot of debate on these things particularly about what actually constitutes continuous integration. And are you really doing it? And blah, blah, blah. And opinions are like, and I'll let you fill in the blank and you can say to yourself the rest of that saying. Most experienced software engineers tend to agree on the big picture, which is basically the idea that you should try to automate your testing and your building and your deployment. But they disagree on the details, and that's fine. But like all buzzwords, managing marketing, they co-opt them. They use these words to mean all kinds of crazy things. So if you hear a manager or marketer talk about CI/CD, run the other way because they have no clue what they're talking about, usually. That and we are learning. So Casey and I are learning, and I think as a community, everybody's learning. I don't think anybody has this all completely figured out yet. So what we're going to show you, it works. In my case, this is what I'm using on an actual project. It's a pared down demo of what I'm using on an actual project. And so it definitely works, but it could be improved. And we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. Oh, yeah. I keep hitting the button on my computer, but right, the title of the thing is what is a CD thing anyway. So many of you have probably heard of the term CI/CD. And there seems to be a lot of focus, especially in the LabVIEW world, on the CI part, the continuous integration part, and not so much focus on the CD part. And CD stands for, depending on who you talk to, continuous delivery or continuous deployment. Next. So in this case, the word continuous means that these things happen often and generally that you're automating it. Next. We're just flying, so we can slow down a little bit. The continuous integration part, to me, this is where an idea goes from your head to the keyboard or the mouse, right? For LabVIEW developers, we type it in, we draw it up. And how do we get from that point to having an executable? How do we know that the code that we entered works and that the executable builds and the installer builds and that, all our VI analyzer tests pass and, and the goal of this step is not so much the built executable, but it's more about getting fast feedback from the developers. Right? So if you make a mistake, you want to catch it really quickly. If you do something that breaks the build or breaks the installer build or causes your unit test to fail or causes your VI analyzer test to fail, you want to know about that. And the VI analyzer is the keeping quality high part. So next. And then the continuous deployment divide is a little nebulous, but in my mind, continuous delivery is, and that text is kind of hidden underneath there, but it should say making the release. I thought I lined those up, but apparently not. Right, so we have our application, and then we're going to stamp it with a version number, and we're going to put it somewhere where our clients can get to it. So we're going to build the installer and version it, and we're going to put it on a share drive or FTP site, or we're going to add it as a package to a package repository or something like that. And then if you go to the next slide, continuous deployment is the actual act of installing stuff. So that could be like a push thing where you're pushing it onto the machine. It could also be what we're going to show you, at least what I'm going to show you, is an auto update thing. So basically the user runs the program and it goes and checks to see if there's a newer version. If it does, it alerts them and then gives them the option of installing it. And part of the reason I did that is because if you have a production machine and maybe a test machine in the lab, you might not want to upgrade the production machine right away, but you might want to update the test machine and run it there for a day or two. And once it's good, then you go update the production machine. And it gives you that option and flexibility.
Just jumping in here, like we're going to show you two different ways that Sam and I have done this. One, Sam is doing it one way. We at Zyah Solutions, we're doing it another way on some of our projects. And like we said, neither way is right or wrong definitively. But we're trying things out, seeing what works for us. And I think Sam's way fits into some of the other like CI/CD pipelines a little better. Whereas the solution that I'll be talking about, the demo that I'm doing, is a purely LabVIEW based example, and we'll get to that, and you can kind of see.
Yeah. So at this point, I don't think anybody's figured out the right way to do it. I don't know that there even is a right way. So whatever you're doing, if it actually works and you're automating all this stuff, that's good. Right? It's a step in the right direction. Not to say
we have a couple.
Always make it better, but sorry.
We got a couple questions. Just for asked, did you build a custom package format?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, but both of ours use NI Package Manager to build the packages. Or well, you use LabVIEW to build NI packages. Yeah.
Yeah. I use the NIPM feed system to deploy the packages. And then Sam uses the package management in GitLab, right?
Yeah, so GitLab has built-in package management and hosting, and so I just upload the NI packages there because I don't know, but somehow in my head it seemed easier than creating my own package server to hold it and grant people access and stuff like that, and I just do all that through GitLab. So, and the feed package management, yeah, that's to Kevin's question. Yeah, Casey's using NI Package Manager to do that, and I'm using the GitLab Package Manager. Next slide. Okay. If you want to go to that link, you can pull that up. And that is the repository that I'm going to use for my demo. The README links to at least a half dozen different blog articles. And then there is a video on how to set up a GitLab runner. So all the code is there. And you can clone that repository and attempt to recreate what I'm doing. But it's complicated. And I tried to outline all the steps in the README. If I miss some, please let me know. But basically, you have to set up your own runner and you have to install certain things on it. And you have to set up your own GitLab access token. And so there's a handful of steps. And the blog article should walk you through most of it. And it should explain what's going on behind the scenes. But it may not be perfect. You might have to fill in a few blanks. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you get stuck filling in the blanks, you can always send me an email or something and say, hey, Sam, I don't understand how to do this thing. Next.
I have a link to my repo too, which will also contains links in the README to some of the other stuff, but now that'll come up later after I do my part of the demo.
And I do, in the thing, I do have a link to our slides, and that link doesn't work right now. So I'm sorry, I need to go update that. So I will.
We'll have a link to the slides eventually too.
Yeah. We'll add that link somewhere.
The link to the repo is the important thing, right? Because that will contain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also
else.
everybody knows how to get a hold of me. So if for some reason I don't get it updated right away, you can always ping me. I give you permission. All right. Yeah. So I'm going to start my demo because it takes about 10 or 15 minutes to run the background. I want to make sure it has enough time to run. This is just about planting the vision and what can be done. And I'm going to take you from something needs change in the code to I got it on my customer's machine. And hopefully we're going to do it in the amount of time that it takes to do this presentation. So cool. I'm going to share my screen.
Do I need to stop? Yes.
Cool. All All right, so first I'm going to share this. And this is a running application. It's built. It's a DQMH continuous measurement and logging example. It's basically the example exactly as it comes out of the project thing, except that I added some auto updating stuff to it. And the important thing to note here is we're on version 1.0.6. And we're going to make a change. I'm going to change the title up here at the top, and maybe we'll add some color just to make it, excuse me, even more obvious that we're changing things. So that's what we got here. Now I'm going to switch to another virtual machine. What the hell happened? Huh.
Did you lose a VM?
Oh, wait. Oh, that's right. Okay, never mind. Oh, okay. I was trying to get back to what. All right, never mind. I just
need to go back to the slides.
Yeah, no, I'm good now. Sorry, I just let the browser disappear, and I was like, oh crap. And I want this one now. Cool. We'll go back to the slides in a second. All right, everybody can see that. I'm going to drag this over here. Okay. All right, so I've got the project here. I've got to check for updates, VI. That's the VI that does all this. And there's a VIPM package behind it and everything. So I added like a VIPC file and some stuff there. So just to run this, you'll see this is exactly what was there. Right? It just says development down here, but this is basically the same thing. So we want to change the title. So let's go here and make a change to the title. And in the initialized case, this is where we set the title. And if I right click here, why is my right click thing not working? Ah, crap. Hold on 1 second. All right. Wow, I hate high resolution screens. Okay. If I click there, I should be able to create a constant. GLA Summit 2022. And we'll also add some coloring here. So I'll view tools palette. That looks close enough to the GLA. We'll go all out and make it really gaudy so it stands out. Okay, cool. And we'll just start flying that everywhere. We'll just do that. Okay, cool. That should be super obvious when we run the new program. Okay, so we made some changes. Okay, great. Now we're going to do a get status just to see that that's the only thing that changed. I don't know what the settings XML file is. Anyway, we're just going to do a get add-am updated FP colors and title. Oh, wait. Oh, get add. I need to get commit. There we go. All right. So now I'm going to push this change to the server. Right? So far, if you're using get, this should seem pretty familiar, right? Maybe you use a different, you don't use the command line, you use like source tree or something. But basically, we've made some changes to our code. We committed them. We pushed them to the server. Now, in the background, I have a CI job set up that's going to run my build and everything. And normally, I would just wait, right, to see that this is done and passes before I go on with the next step that it's ready to release, all right? But for now, I'm just going to test it locally to verify that it worked. So I'm just going to run this and just see what happens. Hey, look, it says GLA Summit 2022 and it's purple. Okay, great. Awesome. Right? That's going to count as my check. Now I'm on to the next step, which is making the release. So depending on what process you have, you might have a lot of stuff to do to make a release. My process is pretty simple. What I do is I have a release notes.txt file. I go in here, delete that, and then I say updated FP colors and title. Then you can do fancy stuff where you pull it out of the commit history and everything. I just like a text file because commit messages don't always necessarily match up to features that the user actually cares about. So now if I do get status, the only thing that's changed aside from that weird XML file is the release notes. So I'm going to get okay, cool. And I'm going to do one more thing, and I'm going to tag this. So get tag. And I use annotated tags because that's the way my system works. All that means is it's got a message with it. And I'm just going to tag this release 1.0.7. And it should be 1.0.7. So I just give it the first three numbers. I could make that whatever I want. I could make it like 2.0 if I wanted. All that matters is it's higher than the last number. And then the last number in the build number, that automatically gets generated. So I'm just going to tag this as 1.0.7.
We have another question in the chat saying,
okay.
Gregory asks, a CI tool will build the executable package installer whenever you commit code changes?
Yes, every time I push, it goes through all of that. So your CI process, you can do whatever you want. I generally run unit tests and build the thing itself and usually the package. I don't know, but building the package every time is necessarily as important. Definitely want to make sure you build the executable to make sure that you didn't like do something that breaks the building of the executable. That's for sure. I don't know that NI packages have a history of like breaking things. I haven't had any issues with that, but all right. So the last step here.
Kevin has another question too. He says, can you do multiple tags to do different parts of CI/CD?
Yes, there is a way to do that, and I can show you that in 1 second. So I'm going to get push, and if you do -- follow tags, it'll take every annotated tag and push it to the server as well as all the commits. So you'll see it'll say push new tag 1.0.7. So what we can do, and this is kind of taking me off track a little bit, but you keep track of time if you want there. So I have 3 stages. I have a build stage, an upload stage, and a release stage. So in the build stage, I have a step that's called build exe and package. And basically it clears the cache, runs the build spec to build the exe, and runs the build spec to build the package. And then this artifact section basically just means grab everything in those directories, grab the package and the exe. And that's what runs normally. And then I have an upload and release job. So the upload just sticks the built package in the package repository. And the release basically creates release notes and adds a release to GitLab. And those, it says ref right here. This, these only happen, under rules, that's it. So this rules right here is what causes it to only happen if the commit tag is there. And there probably should be a rules under this one. Rules release job right here up top. Right, so this is all the release jobs. So this rule says if the commit tag, and this is a regular expression, so it's looking for a digit dot a digit dot a digit, and it could be multiple digits. And actually, there should be a star on the last one too, I think. But anyway, that will find that pattern, digits dot digits dot digit, and it will then run that, and otherwise it skips it. There is one issue with using GitLab CI, and I'll talk about it at the end. Well, I have it in the slides at the end, and that is it will actually start 2 pipelines. So it starts a pipeline for just the commit itself, and then when it sees a tag, it starts the whole pipeline all over again. So it ends up building everything twice, which sucks, and I don't know how to fix that, but it doesn't take all that long. So it's inefficient, but And so at this point, I've pushed it, and the server is doing its thing. And so when we come back to this, I'm going to restart the application, and it'll just automatically see that there's a new release, and it'll download it and update. And so that's, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And
just has a comment with NIPM, there's no guarantee that the new builds are backwards compatible. No, that's true.
Wait, what does that mean? Oh, so if I can't update NIPM on the client side. I don't know anything about that. So on this particular project, there's no reason I couldn't update NIPM on the client side, so it hasn't been a problem.
I think I saw that at some point.
IT requirements or something that wouldn't let you update it, but I would think once you installed it, updating itself, it should be able to. But maybe there's some other reason you can't, because whatever. I don't know all the ins and outs of NI package manager.
I think I tried to install a package at one point and it said like you can't do it with this version of NI package manager. You need to update.
Well, there was like some breaking change a while ago, but I thought that was like maybe a year or two ago, and I don't remember it being. I thought there was some change around the time they like switched to like 64-bit installers or something. Was that might have been part of it? I don't know.
Should we go back to the slides?
Back up, yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to go through a few more slides. Casey's going to do his demo, and then I'll check on mine at the end. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes. It shouldn't take that long, but there's some latency in the network traffic and like communicating from the servers and uploading everything. And it just takes a little bit longer. So I mentioned the minimumcd.org. I think I mentioned that before we started, threw it in the chat. These people are opinionated. If you want to really opinionated and you want to know if you're got the official stamp of approval, you can go there and look at their stuff. I do agree with a lot of what they're saying. So they talk about continuous integration. The first bullet, they do say trunk-based development. But then the very next one says work integrates the trunk at minimum daily. So if you do feature branches and they last less than a day, then you still meet that definition. And so that's okay. Which honestly, you should be anyway. If you're doing feature branches, you really don't want them open for very long because then it becomes merge hell. Next. Oh, the other key, back one real quick. The other key feature there is if your CI breaks, like that's like code red, like fix that first rather than keep building on it, right? So you always want the CI/CD pipeline to be green. If you get an email saying it broke, that's like emergency, like I need to fix that right now. Stop. Everybody, you should like, the email should go out to everybody in your team and nobody should push anything until whoever broke it figures it out and fixes it. Now we can go to the next one. Continuous delivery. So they go, for them, CD means continuous delivery. And so minimum activities, you have to have continuous integration. So you have to know that whatever you're delivering actually works. And the big thing here is you're automating the deployment process and you're not going around that automation. So you're not like, yeah, we deploy this way, but man, when we have a problem, we just take the build right off our computer. The developer walks over and sticks a thumb drive in and does it, right? So that's the big thing here is like, that's only it. And they also, the idea of rollback on demand. And NI packages kind of work for this. They kind of suck for this as well. There's no way to roll back an NI package, but you can uninstall it and install the previous version if you have it. So the one thing you got to worry about with that is just that if you have external databases or data files or something like, and the format of those change from one revision to the next, like a major change, then you're uninstalling and reinstalling might not affect those or fix those. So that's the only thing to be aware of. Next. All right. So we've outlined all this big process and stuff to do and all this automation. And some of you guys are saying that sounds like a hell of a lot of work. And it is. And we'll talk about that too. But why would you want to do this? So main reason, and this is mostly on the CI side, is the rapid prototyping, the agile iterations, getting quick feedback. But it also helps in getting quick feedback in the sense that you can get the software into the hands of your users, and then you can find out if they actually like the new feature you added and if you did exactly what they thought was going to happen, and like, those type of things. Jesper says, have you ever considered using SQLite as a package format? I don't know how I would use that as a package format. I do like SQLite, and I use it quite regularly for other things. I'm not sure how I would put it in a package, but that's an interesting thought.
Maybe we can talk more about that later if we have time, because I'm curious what that means too.
Yeah, that's definitely a conversation to have later. But the real reason you should care. So I've been talking about this with Jorg, and Jorg's like, well, I don't need to deploy all the time. My customers don't even want me to deploy all the time because, deploying means like stopping the production line and restarting it and all this stuff. And even if that's the situation, you can only deploy so often. You can only deploy when it's down. Like, for example, I worked in a nuclear power plant company. You could only install new things when the power plant wasn't running because you couldn't get close enough to the thing without getting fried. So even if that's true, you still want to be able to, if they find an urgent bug and it needs fixed right now, you want to have this in place so that you can just press a button and have it go and do all its stuff, and boom, out pops the software on the end. And Casey put in the last bullet point, which is it's a better user experience. And that's like the auto updating stuff that we're going to show you, it's just nicer for the user if they don't have to remember, oh, I need to check every so often and go to this website and see if there's a new version. Right? The fact that it just automatically says, hey, here's a new version, here's what changed, it is quite nice. Next. All right, so barriers, right? What makes this hard? First of all, graphical nature of LabVIEW, I think we all know that screws us over in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of tools out there that work really well in text files and choke on LabVIEW and don't work very well. And there's a lot of things that work really well in text-based stuff, and we have the equivalent in LabVIEW, but they don't work very well, like block diagram cleanup. You know, sometimes it works and sometimes it makes a bigger mess. The next couple parts are all related. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's a bunch of different tools being used. So in my example, I've got LabVIEW. Okay, great. I've got Git. I'm doing some command line stuff. I got to understand the GitLab YAML stuff. I got to understand how the GitLab thing works. I've got a virtual machine doing all my builds in the background, so I got to understand how that works. And it's running some bash scripts, and I've got some GCLI commands in there. And so there's a whole lot of moving parts. Do you need a different runner for versions of LabVIEW and other dev tools needed? So you can do like one runner with like 10 versions of LabVIEW installed. That's not what I do because virtual machines are relatively cheap. So I have a different runner for each virtual machine, or for a different virtual machine for each version of LabVIEW, and sometimes for each project if they have different driver requirements. Sometimes I'll do two projects and they'll use the same runner, and I don't care about dependencies all that much for that particular project. But if you do have multiple versions, you can specify with the GCLI command. So when you run the command, you just say GCLI and you put a dash LV17 or LV20 or whatever. And then I think there's a separate flag for 64 or 32-bit. So you can totally do that. Again, if virtual machines are hopefully cheap, they're semi-cheap. You can clone it and then you just install LabVIEW, but you have to install LabVIEW anyway. So like the extra act of cloning it, I guess. But it is one more thing to manage. Let's see. Along with all the moving parts there's a learning curve because, you know, we're LabVIEW programmers. We're not bash scripters. We're not Python scripters. We don't know YAML. We're not like big on all the web stuff and setting up certificates and stuff. Could you add a CI step to bash?
He's asking if there's a
LabVIEW versions. I am 100% sure you could do that. That could totally work. Because the trick would be, can you call the backsave from a scripting node or something? And I think the answer is yes. So if you could do that, then you could write a GCLI thing that says backsave to this version. So yes, that could be done. And if you want to talk about that offline, I'm happy to talk to you about that, Enrique. Did we hit all the points on that last one? I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, and investment. Yeah, so the investment is actually the next part. So go to the next slide. Yes, you could do 32 and 64-bit, right? So you could write the code in one on your dev machine, and you could have two different runners and run the same process on both of them, and one's 64-bit and one's 32-bit. So the way I think of this, and hopefully this lands for you guys, because I think of this a lot, is, you know, if you're trying to hang a picture and you need to put in one screw and you don't have a power screwdriver already, you know, and you go to buy one, you look at it and it's like $5 for a handheld screwdriver, or $100 for a power screwdriver. Well, you're going to buy the $5 handheld screwdriver, right? Because it just makes more sense, and it's hard to justify buying the power screwdriver. But if you have the power screwdriver laying around, it'll put that screw in a heck of a lot faster and be a lot easier, right? So CI is kind of like the power screwdriver. Like it can make, I feel like every project can benefit from continuous integration, but small projects, it's hard to justify it. And also there's a little bit of setup cost. So imagine if every time you picked up the power drill, you had to charge the battery, right? So again, if you had to charge the battery and you just need to put in a screw and you want to hang up your picture right now and you don't want to wait, you just grab the regular screwdriver and go. So that's kind of my rationale and the way I think about it. And I think the next up is your demo, Casey. Maybe there's another slide.
Yep. So,
you're up.
All right.
Yeah. Comment. I did actually mean to mention this, Matthias. So yes, Matthias gave us a demo, and I will try to find the video of that demo because we recorded it and put it on there, and I'll throw it in the chat. But he has a tool that does a lot of this out of the box. And so rather than reinventing the wheel, you can go throw Matthias a few bucks. And I think he has a free trial. So you can even do a free trial and check it out.
Very reasonably priced.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it is not ridiculously expensive. So,
All right. Okay. So, taking a step back, I guess, from all the Git stuff, the YAML, all that stuff. Again, like Sam was saying, I'm a LabVIEW programmer. So our approach at Zyah, we're still full transparency. We're still figuring out what works best for us when it comes to CI, continuous integration. But the issue that always remains is that when you're writing software for clients, you need to deliver that software to them, right? And when they're running a new version, there are changes that need to be made. And when they're made, you need to get the updated version to them. And how do you best do that? So what we're focused on right now, and what I'm going to be demoing, is kind of that aspect of how you get updated software to the clients. And another thing is that, as you kind of maybe have seen, there's a lot that we talked about, the overhead and needing to learn some of these new tools. So this approach that I'm going to show forgoes all that. There are some good reasons to use that and the way it fits in with some other things, but what I'm going to be showing uses the NI tool stack only, specifically LabVIEW. So
yeah, so there is this like trade-off of like using the best tool for the job versus forcing LabVIEW into all these nooks and crannies. And I mean, the trade-off is if you use the quote best tool for the job, whatever the heck that means, you got to learn more things, right? Versus if you already know LabVIEW, then you just got to figure out how to cram it in that corner. So
this is just to give people ideas of what is possible, and if you want to talk more, see what works best for you, we're both happy to talk about these sorts of things. So for the demo, I'm going to show you just as an overview. Again, I'm using NI package feeds as my kind of way to interact with the packages and see if there's an update available. So the sample app, what it does is when it runs, it checks this NI package feed, and if there is a new update, it'll prompt the user if they want to ask if they want to update. If they do, it then calls the sample app updater, which is a separate executable, because if you're trying to update the same application while it's running, you run into some issues there. So it launches a separate updater, and I already have this installed, and you'll see that. And it checks and says, okay, it gets the latest package from the feed, and it uses that to update the sample application, and then relaunches the sample application.
So to clarify, the difference from what I'm doing is my updater actually resides inside the app. Like at startup, it runs the updater first as a separate VI. And mine is checking the GitLab package feed, but otherwise very similar idea.
Yeah, so let me bring this up. All right, so I'm going to do some LabVIEW stuff here. I'm just going to launch my example app. So you can see here, all this app does is it shows my local time, and it shows what version. Because it's from the development environment, it's showing the version of LabVIEW that I'm using. We have this nice GLA Summit logo here. This app looks great. Let's go ahead and build it. And just to show here, I have my version is 1.0.3. Same thing with the package. So this application is built using Active Framework and PPLs because I kind of took a stripped down version of something that I already had. There's no reason why what I'm doing here has to be used in Active Framework. It doesn't have to use actors. It can be used in DQMH modules, anything else. The tools that I'm using compatible with anything. So I'm going to go ahead and build this. And I'm going to build the package as well. And what you'll see now, if I go to the feed, where it outputs the feed, is that there's the updater, which, again, I'm not going to take the time to go through that. It's a separate executable. It's a dependency of the example application, but now it's created this package here, and it's updated the meta files around that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this package feed. This represents kind of like my network share. Mm-hmm. And this could be automated. There are ways to do this, but right now I'm going to do it manually. So now this is on the network share. So now I'm going to stop sharing this. And I'm going to switch to a different machine, which is kind of where my deployment machine. And I already have NI Package Manager installed.
I think we're doing pretty good for time. It's like 5:35. So
okay.
And
Okay.
my thing's done, so it'll take like 5 minutes to show my part. So
Okay, great. All right. So I go here. This is my, again, representing my network share. I'm going to go ahead and run this package. If you're not familiar with NI packages, basically you can think of them as installers for your application, at least for the purposes of this demo. So it's going to install the GLA Summit example version 1.0.3, which we just built. It's done. And here's the icon. I just want to show something really quick. If we look at the NI package manager here, and you go and you look at the feeds, these are all the feeds that are just included when you install an application that you need for the runtime engine, LabVIEW runtime engine. But if you look now, I'm going to run this application here. So this is running from an executable. Same thing we saw before is on the development environment. It's showing the local time, and now it's showing the version of the built executable, 103. And if we go back and look here, what it does is using the auto update utility package, which I have links to and is a publicly available tool, it adds this GLA Summit package feed. So you specify this in the application, say where the location of this feed is and what the name is, and it'll add it so that it can be monitored. Right. So now, though, I go back to this application. Do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions. The last thing I see is
there are, just shout them out. So this is a pretty nice application, if I do say so myself, but it kind of bothers me that the background is gray, the standard LabVIEW gray, when we have this nice GLA Summit logo here. It sure would be nice if we updated the graphics so that it matched and looked a little bit better. So I'm going to switch back to my development machine. So let's go back here. And so this is the GUI. I'm going to change the color here. And because and now you can see that it matches the background. And wow, that looks a lot nicer, right? So that's deserving of a full version number bump. So I'm going to call this version 2.0. Update that here. Again, this is an aspect that could be automated, that could be done a little bit more seamlessly.
So question, and this is something that I always make the installer, the package or installer version the same as the XE version, right? Even though they're like somewhat disconnected in LabVIEW.
Yeah.
That's kind of been my, okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't know if other people have other strategies on that. So, all right, build this again. Also build the package. And if we look here in the output, in addition to the original package that was created, now we have version 2.0. Right? So I am going to copy this back over to my network share.
And to Casey's thing, all of this could be automated. So the building that you just did on my tool, it automates that, and you could also easily automate copying stuff into the feed. So
yeah, I've done stuff with the application builder API. It's not packaged as nicely as the auto update utility that I'm using in here. So, but yeah, it definitely can be done. Okay, so I'm going to now switch back to the deployment, the machine where it's deployed. So we're back here, and now because you look here on the share again, copied it over, we have the new version here. When I run this application, it will check that feed and check to see if there are updates available. And it, lo and behold, says there's an update available, says the current version, says the new version that's available. Do you want to proceed with the update? And then it warns that the application will be closed for the update to proceed. I can say no, and it'll just start the application as before. Again, version 1.0.3, keep an eye on that, as well as the color. Let me run this again. So this time I'll say, yes, I do want to update, and it'll launch an application or a prompt for permissions. It'll go ahead and update it. And when it's done, it tells me that the GLA Summit example package was successfully updated to version 2.0.0. Now it asks if I want to relaunch the app. Yeah, because I want to see the nice new colors. And so now you can see that the version of the app, it's version 2.0. You can see it uses the purple color, and everything is good. So if you go in the NI package manager, and you can see here too, it's basically automated the process of taking the updates and updating it to version 2.0.
Gregory Jacob has a question. So there are two things. One, he mentioned that sometimes about the package and installer version, sometimes maybe you want to change the configuration or where something goes without actually rebuilding the exe. So that might be a reason to have them off a little bit. In that case, I'd probably just bump the installer and not bump the exe. And then the next time I bump the exe, I'd bump it above and they'd be back in sync, I think. And then there's some questions in the chat. I think you can look at those. So did you know it was an update just by the presence of the new package, or did you actually have to add it to the feed?
So the process of building the package in the background there in the application builder, it adds it to the feed. And then what the utility that I'm using does is it checks the feed and says, get the latest version. It gets the version number back and compares it to what the current version is that's running.
Yeah, and Christian made the point when you copied everything, you copied the packages file too, which is like the manifest for the feed.
Yeah, so that's
available versions.
That's a good point. Let me, since it looks like we have a little bit of time, let me share something. Yeah, so in your feed, if you just go ahead and like drop a package into here, it's not going to work correctly. There's these files here get updated to reflect the information about what's in the feed. A nice tool to manage that is the NIPM feed manager. So if you go here, I've already configured this, but it'll show you what packages are recognized by the feed. If you wanted to add another package or version to it, you could do this, or you could select the old version and remove the package. I'm not going to do it right now, but this then not only manages the files that are here. Why did that disappear? I may have screwed something up there.
There's also some questions about dependencies, and then can you set dependencies that aren't in the feed? I think that's true, because you can definitely depend on NI packages and stuff. And then the package building behavior. I don't know, Gregory, there is a separate option in the tab for building the package, I think, that adds it to the feed. And I don't know that may have
the default LabVIEW package.
But the NI package manager itself didn't really come around until like later, so it wouldn't surprise me if older.
I'm not sure when it happened because I've started doing this relatively recently. But if you look at the package build, if you go down to feed here, this is where you check the box that says add to feed, and that will, if you have that checked, it will add the package file as well as update the meta information about the feed.
All right, cool. We can come back to NIPM if we have a little bit more time. I want to finish my demo.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Got all of your stuff.
I think we talked about dependencies. So.
Yeah, semantic versioning, increment the last number. Yes. All right, cool. Let's look at mine and let's see if mine worked. Let's see this one. All right, so this is my CML UI. I'm going to stop this. So it's been running all along. How about I move that out of the way? There we go. Everybody can see my screen, I hope. Type in CD demo. It'll relaunch the application. It's popped up off screen, but it says, hey, there's a new release available. So it tells you what the current version is, what the new version is, and it gives you the release notes. Now, it only, at the moment, only gives you release notes for the most recent. So if you update it 4 or 5 times, they only get the most recent one. You could probably fix that, but it's a demo. So I can update or ignore. If I click ignore, hey, it keeps running. Everything's fine. If I type in CD demo again and run it, it should pop up every time. And you could probably put a, like, you know, don't remind me again about this version or whatever, but that's up to you guys. But you can click update. And what happens is it says, hey, it's downloading. I do not have the automatically installed, so it basically downloads it. And when you click OK, it pops it open and it says, here's the new version. You just double click. It's a little bit manual, but much fewer manual steps than Casey's way of doing it. Not that Casey couldn't automate all those, but. And I'm sure there's a way to automate this. I just couldn't figure it out. And it's like, yeah, you know what? It's easy enough to have them just double click it. And so now if I run my CD demo program again, we get the ugly purple screen.
You could use a combination of what you've done and what I've done, right? And use the
absolutely, yeah,
the utility to like download it and you have it locally. Specify that as your package feed, and then have it auto update from there.
So that's what's going on. If anybody wants to see, we can go to GitLab. I should have put this up already.
I have a few more slides I want to go through.
Oh, that's right. All right, good. Do that, and then we'll. I can show people what it looks like on GitLab with the releases at the end if we really want to get into that. I'm going to stop sharing. Do the slides. I'd rather do the slides if we had to choose. So do those. And
so here are my links. One link is that's the main one that you want. That'll take you to the repo, and that's the Zyah auto update utility. Has the API that wraps. It wraps with the NIPM API, but I think it puts it in a little more user-friendly way as it pertains to applications. The example that I'm using is contained in the repo as well. So if you clone that, you can run that too. You'll need to update the location of the feed for your own machines, obviously. But there's also links if you look in the README to where those packages are in IPM API on VIPM.io, the NIPM feed manager, the utility itself, and then also we have a blog post on the Zyah Solutions website that talks a little bit more about using it. And
I have a comment on a question. So Jesper says you could execute the NIPM from the CLI, and yes, you are correct. You can, but if you try to reinstall the package while the BI is running, the exe that's running that's part of the package, it doesn't like it. So that would be where Casey's approach of having the separate updater. So if you had a separate updater actually that when you launch your program, you actually check you ran the updater first, and if there were no updates, then it launched your exe, then you could totally do that. And I think Matthias BLT has a similar provision for getting around that problem. So
yeah, so some things I've identified for improvement. I'll just talk through mine real quick first.
Yeah,
Sam,
do that first.
Yeah. So like I was showing in the demo, it auto deploys the application or and auto updates the application, but the feed right now in the demo, I had to manually copy it over to the network share. That can be automated. Sam kind of alluded to this. Sometimes maybe you don't want to update to the latest version. There could be an option included to automatically or to dismiss and not update to that particular version and have it persist across instances. And then, like I said, better integration with CI tools. We're still working through that. But once that's in place, I think having something like this could work well together.
Yeah. So from my point, I think I mentioned this. GitLab rebuilds the exe unnecessarily when you tag it, because when you push the tag, it also pushes the commit, and it runs it once for the commit and then reruns it for the tags, and so it ends up duplicating the build process. There's a way to make that one that runs the tags not run the build step, but the problem is it needs that build artifact, the exe, in order for the next steps to go, and it doesn't exist, and then it causes problems. There's this idea, if you read the continuous delivery book, of like promoting builds, and I think it's on the minimum CD website too, that like once you build something, and it gets tested, you don't want to rebuild it again, because it might, even though it's the same build number and everything, maybe it got built on a different machine, it's slightly different, so you don't want to do that. You want to promote the binary along and move it from one to the other. There's some issues with security on mine. There's a GitLab token that you have to manage in order to be able to access the repository, to be able to download the release if it's not a public thing. In my case, the token is hidden in a text file, but if somebody were to get a hold of that, it could cause problems. If you set it up right, all they can do is access your repository and read it, but that's still a potential security issue. I'd like the setup to be easier. I thought I could just copy all this code from my project and drop it on the CML and it would just work, and no, it's not there yet. Other things, you could do a periodic update check instead of on startup. You could automatically do the installation, so just downloading it. The rollbacks, it'd be nice to have a better thing for rollback than uninstall the package and reinstall the older version.
Kevin has a question. Yes, would you use feeds to auto update Git runners for dependency management on shared PPLs? I'm not sure I know how to answer that question.
Well, I don't know. So I imagine that's possible. I don't know how to do that, so I'll say that much, but I imagine that it could be used. I know you can use VIPM. So one of the things that I don't have on my demo because it requires VIPM Pro is I have a VIPC file, but you could automatically install the VIPC file. And then if the dependencies change, you make sure to change your VIPC file. When you push it, it'll load the new environment.
All right, I think we got a couple more slides, and then we can.
Windows environment variable. Okay, yes, Jesper. Actually, that thought did occur to me when you were talking about that earlier. So yes, that could also work. So yes, that is probably a better way. So I like that. All right.
Oh, yeah. You can talk about this one, Sam.
Oh, all right. I was going to let you talk about it. But so we have this mastermind group. Casey's in it. Kevin's in it. There might be some other Christians in it, or was in it. I think he had to drop out because timing just really doesn't work in the middle of the night in Japan. I don't blame him. I like LabVIEW, but I'm not getting up at 3 a.m. to talk about LabVIEW. But anyway, we get together twice a month to talk about LabVIEW and related things, and we talk about a lot of topics like this and throw ideas around. It is a paid program. It's not very expensive, but there's a small fee, and you get access to a Slack group and stuff. So if anybody's interested in that, you can just ping me an email, or you can check out my website, sasworkshops.com/mastermind, and it's got a little promo video there of people talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot attending them. It's fun to.
Yeah.
I joined also when I was just a one-man shop, and so having that group to talk with was really helpful.
Yeah, and if anybody's worried about paying for it, Stefan, and I talked about this in my latest podcast episode, like he started paying for it out of pocket, and pretty quickly he solved a couple bugs that were plaguing his company for a long time. And he went to us and said, "Hey, I learned this at the mastermind. Will you pay for it?" And so they paid me for it, and they paid. So there's definitely some value there.
We got just a couple other fun things here. Stefan, he organized the Advent of Code for LabVIEW. You may have seen it in some of the other presentations. Advent of Code is just kind of a set of problems that you can solve in any programming language that they do every year around Christmas time. If you want to join, and we have a group that does it with LabVIEW. Sam and I both did it last year. It was great. So there's a link there if you want to take a screenshot. That might be easier.
I'm going to be a contrarian this year. Hopefully you guys don't kick me out. I'm going to try to do it in Python. So if anybody else wants to do it in Python, I'd be happy to compare notes.
What about the pair programming and stuff, Sam?
We could also do that too if anybody wants to do that. I'm happy to do both. One thing I will say about that is that Advent of Code is a great place to experiment and try new things. And one of the things that I highly encourage everyone to try is test-driven development, because they give you the test case right there. They say, hey, for this input, this is the output you should get. Very easy to write a test and do test-driven development. So, and it's low.
And the last thing here, just like if you want to talk more about LabVIEW, can't get enough, right? There's also a LabVIEW Discord server. Again, this QR code will take you to the invite link for that Discord server. If you want to hop on and talk more about that stuff, there's already a channel for talking more about stuff that's happened in the GLA Summit. So feel free to do that as well.
Cool.
Are there any other you need us to go back to any of the slides that had QR codes or anything like that, so you can, if people want to take screenshots for links, or are we all good?
Yeah, we also glossed over a whole lot of stuff. So if anybody has any AOC. Oh, Advent of Code. Yeah, go back to that one. Not whoever the politician is.
All right, there's AOC.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, definitely join the leaderboard. No pressure, though. Like, sometimes it gets toxic. And yeah, the disclaimer at the bottom, not responsible for the time it takes you to solve the puzzles, no, for any discontentment at home. So, yeah.
Especially later on.
As spend a lot of time on it, and it could cause friction with your spouse or significant other. So,
yeah. Gregory points out that you can refresh the NIPM feed or using F5. So,
oh, cool. Good tip. I assume that's when you're in the NI package manager or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Whoever the GLA admin is clarified a little OC versus capitals. Cool. Yeah. Any questions? Just a quick. How do we do? Can we do a quick poll? How many people are automating? How many people are automating any of this process? The question is, how many people are automating any of this process? All, some, none. All right, cool. There's some all, some, or none. So yeah, do you have it automated part ways, all the way? I mean, you can see. I mean, Casey's thing had some manual steps, but those could easily be automated. Mine, like, literally, I made the change, I edited the release notes, and I tagged it in Git and pushed it, and that was it. And after that, hands off, and it went through. And now the demo doesn't do any unit tests. I actually thought about putting some in there, but it was just kind of hard to write some unit tests for the CML thing, and I just ran out of time. I was like, you know, anybody who's watching this and understands the rest of it can understand how to automate some unit tests. If that's not true and you need some help, I'm happy to help with that. But how do I see the poll results? Oh,
The poll section. You see where it's chat up at the top. It says chat.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so all, one person. Cool. That wasn't you, Casey, was it?
That wasn't me.
Okay,
I did some.
So at least one person. Yeah, well, I didn't answer my own poll, but I wasn't necessarily expecting you to. So, yeah,
so most people are doing some.
Yeah. So if you're not automating anything, you should play around with GCLI and see if you can just automate like running a build. So like you can just run it from the command line, because that's also useful. So all this automation stuff, all the CI stuff relies on being able to run stuff from the command line. So if you can figure out how to use GCLI and set up some GCLI utilities to do some of this stuff, that's going to be a huge step in the right direction. So, but a lot of people have some of this automated, so that's good.
Yep.
I'm assuming most people who have stuff automated are more on the front end as far as automating like the CI side, like unit tests and things like that, as opposed to, because usually like the automating the deployment is usually like the last step, unless it's like a big, huge pain to deploy, in which case maybe not.
Yeah, also there are security risks that some people are bringing up, or just other reasons why you can't just automatically deploy it. There's some hoops you have to jump through. So yeah, that's definitely fair.
Yeah, so that's like my method of deployment is like let the end user decide when they update, but it's always available. And so I make a change and I just push it, and if they decide it's worth it to try to upgrade it at that time, then that's good. Because sometimes, you know, they're doing long running tests or something, and they don't want to interrupt it or things like that. Or as they mentioned, you know, I was at a site the other day where they had 4 or 5 production machines and one in a test lab. Well, if the one in the test lab breaks, not a big deal. So they update that one first and then update the others.
So on that note, the utility that I use, the Zyah auto update utility in this, it's open source. It's a community tool. So there are definitely ways that it can be improved to incorporate some of the features that Sam has mentioned or other people have brought up. So maybe like, opt in to update feeds or something like that. If people are interested and want to contribute to that, that'd be pretty cool too. That's maybe something that if you want to give it a shot, let me know. Yeah.
So on mine, you'll find in the VIPC file there are a couple packages that aren't published. The GitLab thing to check for the newer version, that is open source, and that is open and on GitLab. There's a utility for doing the builds, and that is not, but there's no reason that can't be. So if somebody wants a copy of that, I mean, you can just take the VIPC files and that's fine. But if you actually want the source code, do that.
Yeah. So Gregory asks if I have the option to silence for a certain number of days. It does not currently. That's something that could be a useful feature. Jesper's asking, do I have a guide for contribution? That's another area where I could probably make that a little bit better. At the very least, you could probably add some issues, or I think anybody can add issues, right? So
it depends on how you have your repository separate. You make it public, I think by default anybody can add an issue. So
it's public, so I think anybody can add issues. So yeah.
If
you guys, if other people want to add issues, I'm not going to say no to that, and we can discuss as a community what makes sense to update.
Uriel Uribe wants to share. I don't know who that is, but Maybe you'll show up. I clicked
right.
OK. Maybe you gave up.
All right. Well, I got to run anyway. If
Oh yeah, that's right. You got to go. So yeah, and we are at time. So anyway.
All right.